there have been some articles coming out that Sony is also looking into ads for free-to-play games. So if you recall from last week's episode, one of the things that we talked about in our Game Pass and PlayStation Plus conversation was that it was reported that Microsoft was looking into ways to incorporate advertising for free-to-play games, and not necessarily a monetary tool for Xbox and Microsoft themselves, but as a way to offer developers ways to make money. It seems to be the same thing that Sony's doing as well. So this was originally reported by Business Insider. I actually was referencing the Push Square article because Business Insider is a subscription-based reporting platform, so couldn't really read too much into that, but from Push Square did a nice summary of it. And they reported that Sony is experimenting with technology that would inject ads into free-to-play games. The idea is about encouraging developers to keep making free-to-play games, again, bring them to the platform and give them a way to monetize. The report also states that the goal of these ads are to appear in the game itself. So like you think of like posters, billboards, things like that, etc. So like presumably very natural. They also say that there could also be rewards for certain promos like in-game currency, XP boosts, and these things are kind of similar to what we see in the mobile space, the mobile gaming space. And lastly, there's indication that Sony is considering charging for data on consumer privacy, so a way for Sony to make money kind of on the back end. Now, a friend of the show wrote me on Twitter as I kind of responded to this, and he said, his name is Rick, by the way. Rick, appreciate you. Shout out to you. He states, they can do it the right way and embed products and ads contextually in appropriate spots within the game. Or they could do the exact opposite and flood us with unwanted solicitations left and right. If they're smart, they'll do strategic product placement. And I got to say, from what it sounds like they're doing based on what's being reported, it seems like they're going to do the former. And I'd have to agree with you on that, because it does seem like the goal, and like we said with Microsoft and Xbox, I do think it's a way for them to attract talent and bring games to their platform. But I don't know. Anytime you talk about ads in video games, which again isn't new, when we've talked about that, it just feels kind of slimy. And you always kind of think about worst case scenario, like, if you think free to play games, you're probably thinking of multiplayer games, and so having to maybe watch some like 30-second ad in between, matches or something like that. And one of the things I got to say is it's, again, as you kind of scroll through Twitter, scroll through the online ether, it's interesting to see some of the backlash to this. And again, this touches about what we talked about last week, I think, in this drive towards subscription services in gaming and what it means for the video games that we played. Now, we know the article itself and just the idea of placing ads and monetizing within free-to-play games isn't really necessarily tied to Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and these subscription services directly. But I think if you look at the trend of the gaming landscape, where we are currently today and where we're going seemingly within the industry, I do think it's absolutely related, because we're getting to a point where if everything is tied to subscription services, then I feel like you could make the argument that things are more so free to play and they're going to cater towards, the monetization you typically see in free to play games, live service games, etc. And this is just another step towards that. So it isn't too surprising. So again, I think kind of the ultimatum I have to ask, and for us to keep in mind, is this what we want in our games? And based on what I'm seeing kind of, in the online ether, a lot of people don't want this in their games. So I think we got to take a step back and also be very cautious and hesitant when we make steps towards subscription in gaming. Sure, it can make things, some of the games that we love more accessible and more affordable. Sure. And that's, again, I hate this term, but it's consumer friendly. But at the same time, I also think we have to realize what that means, because if we're not buying the games a la carte, then they have to make they've got to make money other ways. And what does that mean? Does that mean more live service games? Does that mean more microtransactions in games? Does that mean now we're going to have to experience ads in our video games? So just think about that, because I certainly don't want this, and I worry that this could lead to a marketplace or content on a subscription service that looks like Apple Arcade. Now there are some good games on Apple Arcade, no doubt. There's definitely some wins, but you have to sift through so much garbage on there to get to the good games, and I don't want that in the video game sphere. And to a certain degree, we have that, but it's much easier to find the good stuff because it does bubble up to the surface when you can buy things a la carte. And there's worthwhile games to play. Again, if everything's on a subscription service on multiple platforms, and it's less about creating something that's worthwhile to play and more about attracting and maintaining your attention and then monetizing you off of that, giving you incentives to continue to play and pay for that, then games will change. The way games are made will change. And that's not a direction I'm super stoked on. Again, I'm not saying that single player games of the likes of, like maybe Elden Ring or, the typical first party PlayStation games are going to go away. But I think we're just going to see less of them because that's the focus. There'll just be fewer and far between. Now, I also saw someone on Twitter post an Office meme kind of about this, and I thought it was just so fantastic. I had to like it, and I think it puts this situation about ads being reported in video games pretty nicely. I think it sums it up nicely. And so it basically says, and I quote, "If they put ads in free-to-play games, but you value your time, the games aren't free to play anymore." And end quote. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that sums it up nicely and kind of puts a different perspective, because you're right. If you value your time, and as you should, your time is very important. That's one of the few things you only have a very limited amount of. And, if you value your time and you want to play free-to-play games and you don't like ads in those, and there's now ads in those, then you don't really value, you shouldn't be playing those because you don't value your time anymore. I don't know. I just thought it just really put a nice perspective on it. And I was like, okay, I think that's good. And this gets into touches on a slightly different topic about games and whether or not they respect your time. And, there's a lot of open world games that just don't respect your time. It's just they're bloated. I think of some of the more recent Assassin's Creed games. Like, that's the word on the street with Valhalla, so to speak. But games that respect your time are definitely worthwhile. And I'm starting to think that if we go down this direction, we have free-to-play games and you're having to sit through ads, unless they're embedded. If they're embedded and look very natural, it's good product placement, things like that. Okay, I can live with that. But still, that perspective of respecting your time, I think, is worthwhile to consider. Thanks for tuning in to this clip from the Gamecite Chronicles podcast. You can tune in new episodes every week, Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.